So here we are for Saturday night puja, meditation, reflection, Dhamma reflection. It's been a kind of an exciting couple of days, exciting in quotes. Just last week we had a fire across the valley on a certain piece of property, and that was contained quickly and taken care of. Some destruction of some structures over there. And just yesterday had a repeat of the same thing on the same property, slightly different area, larger fire in the forest, and lots of helicopters and planes with water and fire retardants and cal fire, chainsaws, very incredible response to help contain it, and a little bit more activity today, and it's, I guess, I'm assuming it's under control. Seems like it is. A lot less smoke coming over. So once again we've been spared, but yeah, two in the same, almost a week. It was just not a little more than a week ago that the first one was, and record drought here in California this year, following on a fairly bad drought last year, so things are quite crispy already. We were, two of us were talking yesterday as we went through our mock evacuation, just in case we needed to, which thankfully we didn't, but I was talking with a couple of people, and we were kind of half joking, it's a record drought, 2 fires in a week. All we need, it seems like what we're missing now is an earthquake. And then, of course, tonight, we just had one during puja. So there are some forces out in the world that are calling our attention to be heedful. Uncertainty is a certain quality that comes to mind. Everything is transient, unpredictable in this world, in all worldly kinds of things. There's a lot that we don't have control over and that we cannot know. I was, for some reason, a few days ago, and it came up again in my mind today, was just this memory of something that is associated with Ajahn Sumedho, Lumpur Sumedho. He was as I think most everybody knows, maybe not everybody here, but the former abbot of Amaravati Monastery for many years in England, a senior Western disciple of Ajahn Chah, trained in Thailand with Ajahn Chah, abbot of Amaravati for many, many years, and is now back there as a senior resident, but not the abbot anymore. He's now in his mid-80s. And I was just recollecting a story about him that amuses me, and that it relates to Amaravati. Amaravati is a very, very large monastery, and has many different activities, including a retreat center, and many monastics as well as lay residents live there. And as Ajahn Amaro tells it, they have an extraordinary number of committees to take care of all of the business that needs to be taken care of. I can't remember how many he said, but it was in somewhere between 10 and 20, I think, different committees that at least he sits on. I don't know how many more than that there are, but apparently, I guess, Ajahn Sumedho also was participating in that when he was the abbot, and that had to sit through many, many long meetings, some of which were probably pretty boring. a lot of things being discussed and people's opinions and just the ongoing issues of living in a large community like that. And I hope I remember this correctly, and apologies to Lumpur Sumedho if I misunderstood this, but someone, it might have been Ajahn Amaro, told a story of how during many of these meetings, Lumpur Sumedho could be seen doodling with his pen and paper, probably as a way of just, passing the time while he was trying to pay attention to maybe something he didn't really have too much interest in. But that for some reason, one of the memorable doodles that Ajahn Amaro mentioned, if I've got this right, was the word, and it's a long Pali word that we chant sometimes in some of our funeral chanting. And it's Ananya Tanyasa Mitindriyo, or Mitindriya, which is a kind of a mouthful, but that he's seen doodling this in various forms along the edges of the page, and it's a word that is, like I said, part of the funeral chanting. It's one of the 22 indriyas that are rattled off. These are categories of teachings from the Abhidhamma, which I know almost nothing about, other than that chant that we do. But this is, I think it's the 20th out of the list of 22 of the indriyas, which is another word for faculties, certain faculties, potentials of us as human beings. And this long one, Ananya Tanyasa Mitindriya, is one that we struggle with sometimes when we chant, and we don't always get it all together, kind of. Actually, we're getting better. And this the last couple of times we've done it, almost everybody is getting it more or less the same, without too much variation. But it's a mouthful. Anyway, I've seen it translated in two different ways, and I think probably the second way is more accurate than the first. But the first way that I've seen it translated or referred to also has a lot of usefulness in terms of contemplation, and it can be. That first way, which is probably less accurate, is the faculty of knowing the not knowing, which to me is actually a really useful kind of a reflection, even though it may not be an accurate rendition of this word. But just acknowledging that there is a certain very important quality that we can develop about being clear about what we don't know. And that really goes against the grain of our conditioning in a lot of ways. We all get a lot of conditioning of having to be very certain and sure and self-composed and quite confident, self-confident in our lives, to present ourselves in a certain way to people. But to be honest, there's a whole lot that almost all of us don't know, and to recognize that and know that is a very strong quality. So I've always thought that's a good quality to reflect on and develop and acknowledge. The other translation, which is I would guess is more accurate, and if there's anybody who's a Abhidhamma scholar, then they can correct me, but more of, it's sort of an assurance. I've seen it referred to as an assurance that, or a confidence that we will know, or I will know what it is that I don't know. So it can be referred to as one of the characteristics or faculties that comes when one enters the path to stream entry. It's that kind of faith, or at least enough wisdom, modicum of wisdom, that assures one Okay, there's a lot that I don't know, but I know that this is the path that will bring me into that level of knowledge or knowing or realization. So it's this assurance of knowing, if not, not now, but coming into the future because of the path being firmly implanted on the path. So maybe just to kind of backtrack a little bit about the word knowing. There's a lot of different kinds of knowing in the Pali language. Lots of different words that kind of get translated that way but have different nuances. Words like jnana, as in ajahn Anya is another word. Pajana, sampajanya, panya, parinya, many different ways of, different nuances of knowing, different levels of knowing, qualities of knowing. Some of them kind of mundane levels of knowing, just knowledge in general, very general words or references, or sometimes more like direct knowing, some of them, a direct experience of knowing, or insight knowledge related to the three characteristics, anicca, dukkha, anatta, or wisdom, discernment is another aspect of knowing, and then the knowing of the Four Noble Truths, the deep penetration, full understanding, knowing. So a wide range of uses of this word knowing, and what we know and what we don't know. So anyway, back to the ananya tanyasa mitindriya. Just to, I find that it's a very useful reflection to kind of establish that quality and ask ourselves the question, when we're confronted with something that maybe we're not sure about, or it's challenging, or we're having a reaction but we don't know quite where to go with it. And we can ask ourselves a question like, what is the truth here? What is the truth is a very useful question. What is the truth inside the quality of, what is it that I'm actually experiencing in relation to this particular question or conundrum? And, it might be acknowledging something like, I'm confused, or I don't like this is unpleasant and I wish I didn't have to deal with it, or just acknowledging whatever it is that's at the basis underneath our experience, posing that question. And sometimes the answer might come up of, I don't know. That's the truth. What is the truth? The truth is I don't know. And that's very powerful, because it is in its own way, it is a knowing, a quality of knowing. It's knowing that you don't know. And that in itself is a stabilizing kind of mental quality. And why don't we do this more? I think it's a good question to ask, is like, what prevents us from being able to say that, or being able to dwell with that quality of uncertainty, not knowing. And we've all been, conditioned a huge amount into thinking that we have to know everything. That's the way that the world tells us. Be clear, be confident, put up a good, show. And it's, related to the wish for recognition, for establishing identity, for feeling confident, for feeling secure, presenting ourselves with a sense of being fully in charge of ourselves and our how we present ourselves, so that people will admire us and look up to us, hold us in good esteem. So that prevents us oftentimes from being able to feel comfortable with uncertainty and not knowing. It's good to also maybe differentiate this kind of uncertainty or clear not knowing from the quality of doubt. You know, when doubt is a hindrance that, you know, tends to make one feel kind of agitated or wavering, and it is a kind of uncertainty, but it's one that's based on a lot of confusion, and it's an, you know, you can just, you know, the quality when you've got it. It's very unpleasant and tends to lead towards restlessness and unclarity, confusion and wavering, as opposed to this kind of healthy not knowing, uncertainty, which is kind of leading to more of an open question state of mind, something that opens to a quality of clearness, but one that is open and not moving into taking a position, but waiting for more clarity to come, more understanding to come. So it's an open acceptance as opposed to an agitated state of mind like doubt is. So we do get caught, though, in these patterns. I think pretty much all of us at some point or another. Patterns of getting caught in trying to present ourselves as very clear and very certain, confident, put on the display of confidence. Because, as I was saying, we are programmed very strongly in that direction. With our upbringing, our society is very much geared towards that, and we just keep getting fed in that way. And the one of the ways that that really comes out, particularly in the monastic life, is in this kind of the whole realm of views and opinions, holding views and opinions. Is a way of establishing a certain sense of that security in being right or being confident and being seen in a good light. You know, they say that in monastic life we give up so many of our distractions through sense restraint, and the rules of training that we follow, the renunciate rules of training that we follow. That the one of our major, what remains is for our kilesa, our defilements, to express themselves with, is more in the realm of views and opinions. So find ourselves oftentimes watching these patterns in our mind that cause us to form strong views and opinions, and living with a good-sized community of people coming from different backgrounds, that there's bound to be a variation in those kinds of things, even though we have a very common value in this practice. The views and opinions are still finding their way from the kilesa, finding their way into being expressed usually in terms of speech. And just reflecting on the power of those and where they take our mind, how we pick them up and use them as ways to support our sense of security, establish a position in the world. and how society really supports that too. I mean, more and more, I think everybody's realizing that just the constant bombardment and repetition of extreme positions in the world, and how that's being reinforced and in some ways exaggerated more than ever through very powerful forces of internet and social media, where the methods are actually quite, I don't know, maybe this is too strong a word, but I feel in some ways it's almost kind of evil. It's like Mara embedded into an electronic system where they, like social media or certain news feeds on the internet, you show a certain interest in something, and say a particular political viewpoint or something like that, and you click on it and read it, and all of a sudden that click is recorded in somebody's database and compared with certain qualities, and then you're fed more possible websites or places to go to or people to talk to that share some of those same qualities of the event that you clicked on. And then you click on something else and it's recorded again, and you're kind of being really monitored for what your personal preferences might be in terms of information or, not just consumer kinds of things, but, political things, social issues, whatever. And the more you click, the more you get categorized and compartmentalized, and the more you're fed in that way. And it's a very strong addictive kind of a thing, and you're being shaped in some way by the information that you're being presented. I think, this is a kind of a well-known phenomenon that's gaining a lot of attention in the world these days, in the media these days, and the dangers of that. I mean, it's really a very strong force of addiction. Similar to gambling or substances, that kind of a thing. You get a certain hit, and you go for more, and it just escalates. So the world is being shaped, our inside world is being shaped more and more in that kind of way of developing very strong views and opinions about things. And yeah, it's just really incredible. Moving in a way to see this all happen, and even see it happen inside oneself. And it's creating more and more of a sense of people with very strong views, and reinforcing that whole sense of that it's not okay to just be comfortable with not knowing. We have to choose sides. We have to make a stance. And I think it's really good to step back from that and just ask ourselves, when we particularly when we find ourselves succumbing to it, falling into it, how is this really affecting me? Is it, what's the effect in my mind when I pick up this view or pick up this opinion or pick up this stance of some sort? Does it make me feel better? Does it make me feel worse? Does it contract my mind or cause anxiety or fear or defensiveness? Is there any possible way that, or does it, ask yourself the qualities, is it increasing any wholesome qualities? Is it leading to understanding or compassion or harmony or relinquishment? Is it leading to peaceful states of mind? And we have to then kind of make our value judgments based on how is it affecting us? Is it really working towards our welfare and for the welfare of others? For me to be attending to this and to be developing these kinds of opinions. And if it's not, then having the strength to just stop doing it. Why can't we just say, no more? I don't have to do this. It doesn't mean we don't try and stay somewhat informed if we need to for certain things, but the more and more I get looking at this and experiencing this, the more I just think, it's not worth going there. Do I really need to do this? And why not just say no? I was reading just a little blurb the other day that was somebody making this radical suggestion that people just stop using Facebook, just sign off, just cancel the whole thing, and just don't do it anymore. Whether it's social media or the particular news feeds that you're going to, just discontinue it. Don't go there. Well, there's a breath of fresh air. Guess you could say that's my view and opinion. But it seemed to be one that led more towards a sense of spaciousness and peace of mind and harmony, rather than divisiveness and taking a stand. I was also I'm rereading the Ajahn Chah biography, Stillness Flowing, and there's just one little paragraph that caught my mind very strongly, and I keep on going back to it. But it was a statement that Ajahn Chah, Luang Por Chah, rarely, in fact, almost never had anything to do with politics. No interest in it whatsoever. No going there. No, just not touching it. And when asked why, he didn't have any interest in it, didn't keep up with things, he just said that he tried to concern himself more with matters that have an end. That was really, really great, because that's essentially, all of this stuff that in the political, social realm, there's no end. It's not something that leads to a sense of resolution or peace. It will just keep on reinventing itself over and over again. And he realized that, and just, why bother? There's no solution. There's no end to this. So I won't involve myself with it. So I've trying to adopt that as more of the standard. Well, maybe I should just work on paying attention to things that will support my relinquishment and my understanding in terms of Dhamma. So, what are some practical ways maybe to kind of help make that kind of transition, if you're interested in making that kind of transition, towards letting go of some of these ways, patterns that we create to define ourselves, give us a sense of place in a worldly way, and to relinquish those and to move on from them and to refocus. And just, it's hard not to just keep coming back to the basics of practice, and I've been finding usefulness in when I contemplate this and trying to organize my reflections or meditation practice to keep going back to the contemplating along the lines of kaya sankhara, chitta sankhara, vaci sankhara, and how to reflect on those and pick them up in practice in a skillful way, and always the kaya sankhara, the bodily formation, just always coming back to direct experience. That's, the kind of, or direct knowing. Because we're trying to move away from conceptual knowledge, which has a certain, usefulness to it, but moving more into direct experience, direct knowledge, rather than just abstractions or ideas or intellectual kind of musings, which can have their own kind of allure and gratification with it, and usefulness. But moving more and more over and over again into the more direct kinds of knowledge, direct kinds of knowing. And the bodily formation, the kaya sankhara, is our ground for that direct experience, that direct kind of knowing. Always being able to find our ground and place and centeredness in the body, in the energies of the body, the presence, just the actual. Again, here's Ajahn Sucitto's phrase of somatic presence, and just grounding ourselves there, because it's a very important way of bringing us into the reality of the present moment. We can certainly see our mental experiences expressed in the body, and can use the body and the breathing and the rhythm and the presence to drain off the obstructions of the mind that present themselves, the anxieties, the worries, the fears, the angers, the desires, all the different waves of mental energy that come can be known and felt and soothed within the bodily formation. So we know it, and then we calm it and soothe it. Pasambayang kaya sankhara. Calming the bodily formation. So using that as our ground, always returning to that. It's the core of our practice, just being comfortable and at ease with a sense of well-being, just by being simply in the body. And then further, as the body settles and we're getting clear, to be able to fully know, directly know the citta sankhara, the perceptions and feelings. These are the patterns that we operate under, the way we see the world, the way we experience the world, in all of its conditioned way, years of conditioning, lifetimes of conditioning that establish these ways that we hold the world in our minds, the ways that we experience it, and the feelings that we get moved by, the pursuit of pleasure, the avoidance of discomfort or pain, and generally the totally being tuned out from all that's in between the pleasure and the pain. So tuning into that and watching that, just to get to know our patterns, and letting them arise in the waves and pass away as they ebb and flow, as they go into a dormant stage and rest, and then re-arise again. They wake up and come back in this flow of arising and sustaining and then passing away again, always in this constant flow of experience, to get to know these perceptions and feelings, and how when there's confusion present, we pick up on them and react to them, and go with them for a while until we catch ourselves, and then let them peak on their own with mindfulness, just to be there present with them and watch them as they fade away. And to calm that process, to steady that process, feel comfortable with that. And then to use a lot of care with the vaci sankhara, the verbal formations, the thinking mind, the process of thinking, because that's where we create a lot of new kamma. This is where our views and opinions come from. This is where we start to get entrenched, where we start to feeling like we have to define ourselves. The sense of self starts to manifest through these sankharas, particularly the verbal ones, in our meditation. And to be very careful with it. I think I've heard it said that from Ajahn Sucitto again that particularly as Westerners, we have an incredibly overdeveloped vaci sankhara and a very underdeveloped kaya and citta knowledge of those areas. So we have to take special care with our thinking, and to really develop skillful ways to avoid the proliferative, being taken over, by the proliferative kind of thinking, and being more careful with how we use the thinking process. And I find a good way is just to pose certain useful questions in the thinking process. Asking ourselves, what is the effect of this perception, or what is the effect of following this feeling? How does it result in wholesome mind states, skillful mind states, or is what I'm doing result in unskillful mind states? So this is an effective use of the verbal formation, just asking skillful questions without getting involved in long trains of proliferation. And we do that to really increase this sense of direct knowing and wise reflection, to be able to see where it is that we get hooked and what our patterns are, and to kind of open to our experience in an accepting way, and lessen the need to be somebody, to prove something, to become something, based on just a set of habits and expectations, internal and external, and to be less concerned with how we appear to others, our reputation, our seeking to be praised, avoidance of criticism. And to start to be comfortable with what we do know and what we don't know. And the more we do that, the more confidence we get in this as a path, because we see that it actually really works in terms of lessening suffering. And that kind of direct knowing is a key, and that openness to not knowing is the kind of quality that will lead to us becoming clear enough and confident enough that we can start to say, okay, well, there's a lot that I don't know, but I feel quite confident that I'm on the path to the time when there will be knowledge of how suffering really arises, and how what I cling to and hold to and move towards, how that causes this suffering, and how to let that go, and how to relinquish that through deeper, more insightful forms of knowing, until there's the full knowing that comes with liberation and release. But it's this kind of progression from strongly holding to certain fixed patterns, being more comfortable with, I don't know. Let me open up to seeing what the possibilities are. Maybe there's different ways of seeing, seeing the world, and allowing my mind to settle and receive this and understand this and experience this clearly. And as one does that, one starts to see what is good to hold on to for the time being and what's good to let go of, and just very softly and gently abandon and let go of what it is that we don't need. We turn off the media. We tell our well-meaning friends who are trying to get us to, look at certain political websites or whatever. We say, thanks, but no thanks. Had enough. Not interested anymore. We learn how to restrain ourselves from getting involved in things that just take us down a rabbit hole that's not going to go anywhere, and attend to those things that have an end. So I think I'll leave that for this evening's reflection.